Everybody, sorry about the delay. We've got no audience left now. We'll move on to the Aquatic Network Review, the key findings. We've got Rachel and Carol coming up. Oh, sorry, there is no local board input. Forgot to say that. And no extraordinary items. Right, so we'll go through this quite a lengthy presentation, go through the details, and then we'll go to questions. And just because it's up there anyway, I'll move in. Councillor Ferry would like to second. We've added, are they up there? Just based on some feedback from Kendall. Councillor Ferry and I contacted me last night, and then we worked with staff this morning just to add those. But I can go into detail about that, but just so you know, those two additional resolutions added. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora koutou, ko Rachel O'Brien, toko ingoa. I'm a Principal Policy Advisor in the Community Investment Team. I'm joined today by Carol Conler, our Senior Policy Manager in Community Investment, and Garth Dawson, Head of Service Partner Delivery, Pools and Leisure. This work is part of a broader suite of improvements being undertaken to better align our community policy and investment advice to Council's strategic and operational environment. By better responding to the key directions from the long-term plan, we can provide higher quality advice to inform governing body and local board decision-making. We brought you a refreshed and consolidated open space sport and recreation strategy in December last year. That's now out for public consultation, and we'll be bringing it back to you for approval in the next few months. But we can also extend this approach to our policy and investment advice around other critical community facilities like our aquatic network. Today, we will be reporting the findings of two priority actions in the Community Facilities Network Plan 2020, namely a review of Auckland's aquatic network to understand the impacts of growth and investigation of demand for regional competition facilities. And we're seeking your approval to develop a program business case to investigate a multi-pronged approach to delivering aquatic services in the future. Detailed findings of the review can be found in Attachment A, and a proposed program business case scope is included at Attachment B. We'll take these as read and just have a short presentation to run through this morning, and then we'll be available for questions. Our review found that Aucklanders really highly value our aquatic network. Swimming is one of the most popular physical activities, leading council pools to be the third most used type of community facility. Aucklanders are also really happy with their experience at council pools, giving them a 95% customer satisfaction rating. This is reflected in our visitor numbers as well, with 32% of households visiting a council pool in the last month. Furthermore, when we asked Aucklanders, 43% said they wanted better access to pools. Council provision is crucial to Aucklanders having access to aquatic services, whether that's for leisure, recreation, or the chance to build critical water safety skills, particularly given our coastal environment and Auckland's persistently high drowning rates. Market provision primarily delivers learn-to-swim services, and this is due to the little or no financial return for other types of aquatic services. And this is a global reality. This is not unique to the Auckland context. The review found that our existing network is largely the result of legacy decisions taken prior to amalgamation. There have only been 2 new aquatic facilities delivered in the last 15 years, while Auckland has grown by more than 300,000 people over that same period. We do have 4 new aquatic facilities in the 30-year planning pipeline, but these aren't prioritised in budget processes. This approach is beginning to have consequences. We're not keeping up with growth, and some Aucklanders are already missing out. For example, demand modelling completed as part of the review found that we have a current gap of 4 large destination aquatic facilities, and as Auckland grows by around 500,000 people by 2052, this gap could grow to as big as 13 large facilities. So we know that there are existing and future provision gaps, But what we need to do next is investigate how we can respond to these to make sure Aucklanders can continue to access a service that they love. Based on the review's findings, we have the opportunity to think about a better approach going forward, one that takes a long-term view of the network as a whole and reflects key directions from the long-term plan. We need to consider key quick questions such as, what are all the options available to council to deliver? What is the scale of opportunity within each of those? And what does this mean for a pathway forward for future investment? We have some initial insights from the network review as to some of the potential options for further investigation. For example, how could we make the most of our existing network? Things like how much extra capacity could we get out of upgrades or extensions, covering outdoor pools for year-round use, and when does it stop making sense to continue investing in an existing facility? How could we support better public access to private facilities, and how much extra capacity could that bring into the network? And when it comes to new aquatic facilities, what are the options for delivering these, including a more proactive approach to partnerships? In balancing community need and affordability, are our current provision metrics fit for purpose, or do they need to be updated? These all need to be fleshed out and assessed, and a program business case structure gives us a robust process to do that work. It can also be delivered within existing departmental budgets. And in regards to those 4 new aquatic facilities I mentioned already in the 30-year planning pipeline, they would continue as currently planned. And it's also worth clarifying a program business case would not be about making decisions about individual facilities. They would still be subject to your normal detailed business case process and decision making. Once completed, elected members will have a robust evidence base to inform decisions about how best to meet the growing needs of Aucklanders for aquatic services, now and in the future. And if desired, it could also enable an informed conversation with Aucklanders as part of the next long-term plan to seek the community's views on how we could proceed. Thank you, and we'll now take your questions.
Kia ora, thank you very much. First of all, just Councillor Ferry would like to ask questions based on the resolutions we talked about this morning.
Kia ora, yeah, I had some feedback from local boards overnight that they were a bit worried because these are their facilities. Hence the resolutions that acknowledge that. Did you want to speak a little bit more, if you could, about how you intend to involve local boards in the next phase of the process? And then I do have one other question, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, I can speak to that. So we plan to engage local boards as well as the committee at key stages of development of the program business case. In the agenda report, you can see we've called out the point at which we move from a long list of options to a short list of options for further investigation, and then also towards the end, when we have a more complete draft business case, program business case, we'll again come back and engage local boards and the committee ahead of final reporting.
Great, thank you. My other question was just in relation to the, there is quite a bit in the report about needing new pools, and I just wanted to check that looking at expansion of existing facilities is a possibility as well, including in local board areas that we may have identified there isn't a shortfall, but they could help to serve a shortfall, say, in a neighbouring area. I'm specifically thinking of Cameron pools, but no doubt there will be others throughout the region. So I'm just making sure that's not ruled out in this.
That's correct. We're probably very much looking at a multi-pronged approach going forward and making the most of our existing network, looking across what we already have and how we could get extra capacity out of that is definitely part of what we'll be looking into.
Right, and the timing of this potentially coming back to us in a way that can inform the next LTP?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you, team, for your work on this, and thank you also to Councillor Hills and Councillor Ferry for the addition. I was going to raise that as a question as well around the local boards. The Otara Papatoi local board raised concerns with me at their business meeting on Tuesday. So just in addition to that, and then I've got another question. They asked specifically about whether you've considered the equity issues, whether any new pools will be fully funded, because I think the advice they got, or they got from their officers, is that the new pools would be fully funded by the governing body, and the local boards are concerned if that might create some inequity, because currently the local boards have to find funding within the fairer funding model to service their existing pools from their ABS funding, for example. If you could comment on that. And then my second question is around whether you've considered, looked at some of the master plans that exist. So, for example, there is a master plan for the Manukau Sports Bowl, and that includes a swimming pool, an Olympic swimming pool, because they considered that there is no Olympic swimming pool for that area of high deprivation, not one that's close by. All the pools fall short of that Olympic standard, and I think the closest one maybe is either in the city or further out than that. So whether you've considered that the work that Ike Panuku's done in those transformed spaces. Kia ora.
Thank you for the question. I can answer the first one and then I might get Carol to answer the second one. We did do a briefing to local board members recently, and just a point of clarification, when we talked about funding of new pools, we had talked about historically to date we have only added 2 to the network since amalgamation, and that those were funded through a governing body decision. In terms of moving forward in new pools and how they would be funded, I think we're in a new era of governance with local boards and governing body, and future decisions about how new pools might be funded, I think would be something to be answered going forward.
Yes, and regarding the second questions, so as we look to expand and make the most of our existing aquatic network, we will look into the work that's already been done. So we'll look into existing master plan, concept plans, so that would just be an input into the program business case. With regard to an Olympic-sized pool, so we have done some work, and so has Sports New Zealand, which shows that there is no gap in provision in Auckland and indeed in New Zealand for a 50-meter pool. So when we look at the network's development going forward, we're not proposing to look at 50-meter pools, but more destination-type facilities. So 25-meter pool for lane swimming and some leisure water.
All right. Kia ora. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Member Ashby.
Kia ora, thank you. In your report, you talk about four areas and that are currently in the 30-year program, which is a long horizon, of course, for some of these communities that have been waiting. And so West Auckland is, in general, just there's not really anything there. And then obviously the other parts were in areas of the south. So I guess, 2 questions. The first is, because these areas also have higher Māori populations, can you provide, I guess, examples of how, because this is going to be a fit-for-purpose sort of network approach rather than specific, but, can you provide examples of how this is going to achieve Māori outcomes in health and social wellbeing, and does that correlate to the Māori outcomes framework or other research? And then the second question is just, like I led with, which areas of Auckland will focus for a fit-for-purpose aquatic network to support those Māori outcomes?
Yes, so thanks for the question. So in terms of Māori outcomes, so we know that Maori population are keen swimmers, so they have a high participation rate in aquatics. So better delivering capacity across Auckland will obviously benefit them. So, and we know that obviously physical activities deliver not only social benefits in terms of social connection, but also health, mental and physical health benefits. So that's the contribution to the Maori outcome framework. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. The second question, I guess, was the geography of how that's applied across the region?
So we've have done demand modeling for the whole of region, and we have used local board areas as a default lens for looking at where gaps might be. Of course, catchments are not defined by local board boundaries or any boundaries for that matter, but we are looking at a region-wide approach. We have also taken into account equity. So we have looked at which communities have got a higher rate of deprivation. We also have looked at which communities are missing out, so participation rates, and which community do not have access to a facility, whether private or public. So we have used a multi-layer assessment tool, and that's given us a good idea as to which are our communities of greatest need. So we have looked at that across the whole of the region.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a number of questions. I just wanted to point to, I think it's point 42 of the report here, where you've listed the various kind of priority projects. Henderson Massey, it says here, funding of 15.1 million has been allocated for land acquisition by 2032. Now, I pulled up the Our Auckland press release, which actually says that, you know, the balance of this funding is from FY30. So can I just confirm to you, with you, what financial year that funding will be released in the LTP?
Sorry, we can't remember. We'll have to look it up. We can look it up easily, but we don't have this number in mind, the year in mind.
You know, I appreciate that. That is a fairly detailed level of questioning, I suppose, but I really don't want to pass acceptance of a report if we're going to accidentally delay funding that's much needed. So I'm not sure what to do about that, but maybe a secretarial note or something, I don't know. Let me think about it. But speaking of thinking about it, so the two pools that you pointed out here that have been delivered since amalgamation, correct me if I'm wrong, they're actually legacy projects, right?
That's correct, yes.
So the Super City in nearly 15 years haven't conceived of a pool based on need and then built it.
That's correct as well, yes.
Thank you. It illustrates the need for this, I suppose, eh? But I just want to be super clear as well. Going back to the Northwest, from year 2 of the LTP, we have, I think it's 300K for a detailed business case for that pool. Would passing this work today threaten to delay that at all?
No.
Fabulous. My final cue. So it's a bit of a detailed one, but we've established an informal, political steering group for the Northwest Pool to sort of guide that detailed business case through and work with stakeholders in the community. And actually, a bunch of opportunities have come out from all parts of the community for that. It's come to a point where I think to give this group proper support, I suggest that we establish a more formal working group, and maybe through the Henderson Massey Local Board might be the way to do that, in terms of a vote. But can I just check, would you be willing to engage with this working group ongoing to keep the project moving forward?
I can pass on the request to the team who's leading on the detailed business case. My team is not doing detailed business cases, but I can pass it on to that team, Angela Clark's team.
Thank you. I'd really appreciate that. And just finally, I also appreciate sort of advice that I sought around that pool as soon as I can. That'd be great, because I've got people asking me, so I want to see what we can talk about. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Henderson, I just asked Megan, I don't know if we need to provide any additional Chair's rec on ensuring that moving this forward doesn't contradict any previous decisions we've made on, especially on those LTP funded.
Yeah,
so I don't know
want to accidentally delay funding by 2 years.
I would hate for that you to feel that way. I know that's not the intent, but we're just, if we'll work on some words in this.
I appreciate that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, and it's based on a couple of things. But first of all, these are incredibly expensive things, and they're getting more expensive every time. They get more flasher every time, and so the scope goes up every time. And if the scope goes up, the costs go up. So I want to know that if you're going to have evidence in the future, we're providing swimming pools, not entertainment and centres for Auckland. So, this is the background of where I get to the questions. Secondly, the government have stopped funding school pools, and that's not necessarily our problem. So I'm not hitting ratepayers to fill up for taxpayer holes. So I want to have that in the thinking there somewhere or other. The other bit is the evidence from the floating pool, otherwise known as Brownie's pool, is that most users come from South Auckland and Kelston. They travel because it's free. So that the ideal of localism has been disproved. So I want to know, first of all, what is the general difference between summer and winter figures? And secondly, exactly where did the $30,000 to $50,000 person come from?
On that last point, you're talking about the provision metrics that we've adopted, the 30 to 50.
Somewhere other that you're supposed to have one between every 35 to 50,000 people. So is that based on what? International stuff of cities that don't have beaches? Or what is it?
So I'll answer that last question and then get Garth to speak about usage of our current pools. So the 35 to 50,000 people per aquatic centre, local aquatic centre, is in the Community Facility Network Plan, which was developed in 2015. And that is based on benchmarking across a number of comparable cities. Whether they have beaches or not, I am not sure, but we normally benchmark against cities in the UK, Canada, and Australia. So that is...
Well, it's very important,
yes.
Because this is not an inland city. This is a city where people go to the beaches in huge numbers, and you should know those numbers. And that's why I'm trying to come to that. So comparing it with Des Moines or somewhere in the middle of America or Canada is completely pointless.
So we're looking to update the metrics, and we're bringing a report to this committee in the next couple of months to get support for an improvement program, in which we will look at updating those benchmarks and metrics potentially.
Okay, well, you've got an early warning to go and check your benchmarks. Okay, summer to winter, what's the usage?
I can speak to that. The usage across the network is, as Rachel's pointed out, we have got a gap at the moment of around 4 pools, and that varies by season and by location. We are busy in the summer, but the summer is a 4 to 5 month period. In the winter, we are busy in different ways in different locations, so we're constrained by, we have a finite resource of pool space, so the peak times and the pressure points are sort of similar across the network. It's after work, on the weekends, that sort of thing, and some of our aquatic centres are just as busy on holidays and weekends as they are throughout the summer. And with respect to schools, the schools who are using our public facilities because they don't have school pools, we welcome that. It's mostly actually during our off-peak time, during school hours, so that doesn't create additional sort of strain on the network at this point. But some of our more popular facilities like Albany Stadium Pool, West Wave and so on and so forth, we do get usage constraints throughout the year, and between summer and winter, the winter is still it's the bulk of our visitations during the winter, but that's because it's a longer period of time. And Kauranga Plaza Harbour Pool's been fantastic. I really appreciate having that as part of the network, and it's been a great addition to our public space. And then on the final point about the cost of facilities, there are some opportunities to look at low cost and well-built facilities. There's evidence of that across New Zealand. That would come out in the detailed design process, and I'm very keen to make sure that we've got facilities that are both fit for purpose and value for Aucklanders.
Okay, well, where I'm getting to that is, I mean, the cost range from the floating pool to the proposed one is a multiple of over 100 times more expensive, probably near 300 times more expensive. And so if it's to benefit for the summer peaks and everything, we could probably put 4 or 5 of those around the place that would reduce pressures elsewhere and change behaviours. We've got better public transport coming into the city and other places, but we've got lots of places around we could do those. So I want to really, really know that if we're going to have this thing, it's going to be based on information, which I think one of those says it was going to be based on information, real information. Then let's have some real information and look at a kind of a more thoughtful, balanced one. Just, it will take a lot to convince me that $75 million is a good investment for a swimming pool. It might be a lot easier for some of the other people around the table, but for me personally, that's a hell of a lot of money. It can go a long way for other things. And so if it was just so good, because I keep wondering, if it's such a good thing with such huge demand, why is nobody from the private sector going into it? And can we market our beaches better to take some of the demand off at certain times? But I can tell you there's people running buses in from West Auckland and from South Auckland to use the free one. And so we need to learn some lessons from that. So I want to know what are the lessons from all those things before we spend $75 million on anything. And so, and I mean, there are other areas that, and you said with the schools, it's good that they welcome that, but basically they are escaping any capital expenditure to use our capital expenditure. And I don't think the ratepayers should be sorting out the government's shortage of cash. And if they are using them and we're saving on some expenditure somewhere or other, how can we get some of that money back from the government saying, well, you don't have to spend $10 million at Avondale High or wherever it might be because they're going to use the pool around there. Let's have a contribution. So I want some real good thinking about this because $75 million for a pool is unbelievable sum. And so that's very much for that. Thank you for answering those questions as well as you have, and I think you've probably picked up that you'll have to answer some more in the future. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, team. Good work. Can you just break down that 32% number of Aucklanders that are accessing aquatic facilities? The aquatic facilities have component parts, and I'm just wondering, how much are actually using the water part versus the gym part, or there might be childcare, there's, there's cafes that can be accessed as well. I just want to sort of understand that is a net number that are actually using water as opposed to, the other services that we provide.
Yes, thank you for the question. So as part of the review, we did some primary research and we did some intercept survey of pool users. So we have quite a good, a lot of information about what type of services people use. I haven't got the exact number in front of me, but we know that a lot of people use lane swimming as a primary service, leisure water. So just, taking your children over the weekend and having some fun. And then the sauna and spa, also very popular. And then learn to swim. So those are the 4 key services that people access when they go to a swimming pool. We can share with you the detail of that survey if you're interested.
Look, I could possibly help, Councillor. Last year we had just over 8 million visits in total to our Pools and Leisure Centre network. 3.5 or below, about 3.3 million of those were aquatic visits. 1 million were to our fitness centres. 2.5 million to our fitness centres and 1 million to the sort of stadiums and recreation spaces. So aquatics make up about 40% of our total user visits to the whole of the network.
Okay, look, that's the main thing that I understand, that you've got that data and it's rather than a headline number. And can I assume that you've got data on those numbers throughout the calendar year? And, I'd imagine, but I won't imagine, you can tell me, leisure, the demand for leisure water, recreational water, probably peaks, as the summer months arrive, and is that correct?
That's true. Yeah, we track visitation hour by hour, day by day, and week by week across.
Right. Now, this might sound like an odd question, but given that there is pressure on budgets, and in this program that you're embarking on, given that leisure, the demand for leisure water can be, in some instances, be offset by proximity to eastern beaches, North Shore beaches, etc. Now, I know that's not attractive in the winter, but given the pressures, how much do you weight the access that leisure users and even, blue water swimmers, for exercise might have with the proximity of a beach? Do you include that in your assessment? I'm particularly interested in, say, if you've got a Papatoetoe, where we're seeing in this report, there is, a shortage of water space, but there's almost no proximity of Papatoetoe to an easy swimmable beach. It's a long way. That sort of example. Go to Howick, eastern suburbs, Takapuna, Devonport, really well supplied with great recreational water.
I think where we would take that into account is when we, at detailed business case phase, when we looked at the different functionality that a pool would deliver or would have. If it's far away from a safe swimmable beach, then we might consider some outdoor swimming space or water space. So that's one of the options we will look into. And West Auckland is a good example of that, where there could be a potential for an outdoor pool as part of the complex because it is far from a safe swimmable beach. We also have an understanding from our survey about why people don't go to our facilities. And very few people have said they don't go to a pool because they access or they swim at the beach. So it doesn't seem to be necessarily either or.
Can I just add another point to that? Auckland's population is growing and sort of the demographics are changing as well. There's a number of new Aucklanders that are moving in that don't feel confident at the beach as well, and also that don't like to spend the whole day out in the sun. So we're seeing a lot of people using indoor facilities during the summer because they're lifeguarded, they feel safe being being supervised by lifeguards, and because they're indoor under cover. So some combination. The sort of another point to note is every one of our aquatic facilities is different from the one next door to it. Some have lane pools, some have leisure water, some have big have more space for people to relax and sort of spend the day there, and others feels like something you should come to and spend no more than a couple of hours. So it's not quite a straightforward thing, but it would certainly be part of the consideration we'd have to sort of look through.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Turner.
Just two questions, kind of backing up from what the Mayor was saying to a degree. First question, we were just told by the last meeting that Council turned down an offer of a gift of land in Avondale for pool facilities. Was your department, do you know that if they were consulted in that at all? No. Okay, thank you.
Not aware of that.
And the other thing, just knowing that, you have to take note of all sorts of plans and things. Going about the beaches and stuff, this shoreline adaptation plan where we've drawn lines saying we're not going to invest in infrastructure over certain years, does that come into your thoughts? Like I'm thinking about swimming at the beach, I can think of a bunch of infrastructure. Sure, we've got a new pool down the bottom of town, but on the Manukau Harbour, we've got a whole bunch of bits and pieces that people use at the beach to go swimming and enjoy the outdoors, which are totally neglected and fall inside this plan where, oh, well, we won't worry because they're going to be inundated. Do you have to consider that sort of stuff as part of the balance you make between, you know, the different water potentials to relax and recreate?
I think we have a policy to locate new facilities away from coastline and making sure that they can endure any climate disruption. So that's the way we look into the shoreline adaptation plans. That's probably where they're most relevant to our work.
So in a nutshell, that plan makes you consider further away from the coast, is it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mike Lee. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, officers. I'm quite happy with the report, but I just want to pick up on what I think is a discordant piece of ideological jargon in the report, if I might say so, and that is under 4A, Auckland Council has a role when there is market failure, where goods and services are needed to enable thriving communities are not readily provided by the market. That sounds, in terms of our role, our collective role, somewhat diffident, almost apologetic. Like, we're only here because the market's failed. No, that's not right. That's not right at all. And Auckland Council has a long-standing role in our predecessors in the provision of parks and recreation, facilities, amenities and infrastructure, and it's implicit in its social contract with the ratepayers and the wider community. So we need to be proud of our role. We have a valid role, and that was certainly supported as the outcome of that Section 17A review from the wider public and from council frontline staff. So we're not there just because there's been a market. The swimming pool market has crashed. There's no such thing really. It's the private part of it is add-on, and that's fine. Diversity, that's fine. But we have a central role. Our predecessors built this city, and we should be proud of that. Thank you.
I don't think there was a question, but maybe if there was an opportunity to answer that question, just on that's not the only thing we consider, and maybe we could alter that as we go forward, because I do agree with Councillor Lee that part of the issue is providing services that aren't necessarily provided. But do you have any comment on, making sure we're doing this because we also want to deliver for Aucklanders?
Yes, thank you for that question. So we know through surveys, through number of visits, that Aucklanders, and the review last year, that Aucklanders really value aquatic services and having access to our swimming pools. And because it's such a well-loved service, that's why we're bringing this report to you, because we want to assure that we've got a pathway to make sure that future generation can also have access to aquatic services, across all of Auckland. So absolutely, yes, it is a well-loved and valued services that councils all over the world provide. In Maine, there's some private provision, as we mentioned in the report, for Learn to Swim, because there's money to be made. But in a lot of other type of aquatic services, all across the world, local authorities are involved in their provision.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks for your indulgence, Chair, and I'm just flagging I'd like to sort of speak very briefly on it, but I did forget a question. I know the data exists centre by centre on visitation per year because I saw it from last term, but could I ask that somehow that data gets circulated around? It'd blow your mind, colleagues, to see the level of visitation on some of these individual centres. So is it possible to kind of get that circulated?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Leone.
Yeah, just following on from some of the earlier comments from Councillor Henderson about a working group for his pool in Henderson Massey. I'm just wondering also if we could look at that for the Faux Aquatic Centre, because obviously there are huge concerns that the money keeps getting pushed out in every 10-year plan, and I think that it is going to have to take a significant formation of a group to try and continue pushing for this, because I mean, I'm looking at the fund there, 89 million. I've raised this in the revenue committee around the concerns I have that I'm hearing that other councils are getting quotes for pools a lot cheaper than what we are as Auckland Council. So, I mean, for example, I've heard in Hawke's Bay they've built a pool down there, aquatic centre for 60 million. We've been told it would be 100 million to do something of a similar nature here. They've built a pool up in the far north for a lot less money. So I've just got some real concerns around the culture of how, obviously, the decision making on the costs of pools and whether, you know, the private partnership model, if there's any progress on that, because I have real worries that that might not occur unless we do move towards some kind of private partnership model for the Faux. We're the only ward in the whole city that does not have a swimming pool. I know that there's other local board areas, I've been told from a councillor, that does not have a swimming pool, but in terms of wards, we're the only ward that doesn't. So we have to start thinking outside the square of how to actually achieve that. And then after that, I've got another question.
Sorry. I think looking at different way of delivering our aquatic facilities, and the four that are in the pipeline are definitely on the cards. We know that it's a large investment, and a large investment of capex over 2 or 3 years during construction. So having a partnership and potentially a lease wouldn't make the facility cheaper, but it would smooth the expense over many decades, so which could be more palatable to this council. So definitely something we're thinking about as part of the program business case, different way of funding, different way of delivering for new facilities.
And we can look at a working group as well to kind of push some of that forward.
Through the chair, if I might take that. Look, I think we're just trying to balance, and we absolutely will want both local board and governing body involvement in all of this work. We're also just wanting to balance the number of working groups that we will have. We could potentially have one for every single individual facility, let alone the kind of broader program. So I'd prefer to try and work that out and be clear for you. There is an existing working group, and I'm struggling to remember the name, ladies. There's something
There's a joint governance working group, which where the local boards and the governing bodies are together.
Yes, thank you. So we would be keen to continue to use that forum as opposed to creating new ones, but keen for your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely the community have said to me that they would like to get involved, and they already have a lot of strong relationships with the local businesses who have said in the past that they'd, apparently there has been a fund put together. I'm not sure where that money is now, and I know I'm just taking note of our local board chair at the back. But there has been a community push in the past, and I'm just asking, and I know obviously we need to look at the future of how that works, but if they can be at the table with helping. Just the other question that I had on point 45 in terms of the school pool network, and acknowledging again our chair at the back end, knowing that the local board have put money into having the Avondale Intermediate pool open over the summer holidays because we don't have a pool. And just wanting to know, are there any plans in the future to actually look at how we could work with communities? Because I know that there is definitely a want and a need for community groups again to say that they would possibly look at providing or paying for the training of lifesavers to be there to man the pools at a very cheap cost. For example, I know New Windsor Primary School only charges $4 to be able to use that, but if we can be doing that on an interim measure, because obviously 2033 is quite far away.
Thanks, Councillor. We're very keen to work with local, from a delivery perspective, operational delivery perspective, we're very keen to work with local schools and communities to increase opportunity until we can provide that ourselves. The Waterview Primary and Avondale Middle School over the last summer was pretty successful. It wasn't very easy to set up and manage, so we need to sort of sharpen up our processes to make that a little bit more straightforward each time. Managing just summer pools is often a challenge from a sort of a optimisation perspective anyway. We welcome the opportunity to use facilities that are underused at other points of time or help to facilitate the use of them. There are a number of concerns and issues that we need to sort of navigate our way around. Sometimes school pools aren't near the access point for the school, and so there's access issues that we need to navigate with the school and so on and so forth. Who's responsible for paying for the plant and equipment, not just the lifeguards, and so on and so forth. So absolutely open to having conversations with any of the community groups that can provide that resource and that council can help to facilitate. And we are providing advice to the local boards around that for the new work program.
Okay, no, that sounds good. It's just to say that there's definitely been positive feedback about people wanting to do lane swimming at Avondale Intermediate, for example, through the other winter months too, because it's a heated pool.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have Councillor Walker, Councillor Philippine and Councillor Fully, and then we should probably try and move on after that. Councillor Walker. Sorry, and Councillor Sayers, I didn't see you there, sorry. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Got a couple of questions, and I'm just looking through the report that you've got, the aquatics report. I mean, are you envisaging and looking at options where we could have a partnership, say, with the YMCA that we already have an operational relationship with, but particularly with entities like the YMCA that actually have access to capital and run pools, not just in New Zealand, but also in Australia, for example. So that's just one question. And how does that influence your thinking?
Yes, so when we, if we get approval today and we develop a program business case, we would be looking at a long list of options. And when we, if we're thinking about either new pools or accessing existing pools, those types of options would for sure be on the table and part of our investigation. I think the important part of the work that we would like to do is understanding the scope of that opportunity. So how much could we get out of things like that? How much can we get out of different partnerships? And how much of the answer does that represent? Because then we understand where else we might look to make up the rest of the capacity that we need to identify.
Okay, and the other question I've got largely goes to costs, but it's around the nature of the pool. I mean, at one extreme, there's that pool, is it Brownie's pool or the like, that's down on the waterfront, this floating pool? I mean, that's a different model. Another model might be a pool that's located on a reserve that is the pool itself, but without having a very expensive building over the top, it might just have some shade material. What does that cost look like? What is the relative cost of heating water? Because with advancements in solar and the like, that's now much, much cheaper than it used to be. There are also significant changes in technology with how you treat water. That's becoming more economical. So what does a model of the pool look like where it doesn't have to have the expensive building? The water could be heated. It could be very economical to run and conceivably put in place fairly quickly. Have you considered that sort of model?
Just worth pointing out that in the report we speak about low-performing assets, and those are assets which have high cost to serve and maybe low vegetation. And out of the 5 that we mentioned in the report, 4 are outdoor pools. And one of the reasons for that is that because they only operate part of the year. So outdoor pools, you know, they might just be might be cheaper to construct because obviously you don't have a building on top of it, but they're not necessarily very efficient to run. And maybe, Gas, you want to add to that?
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, there are advancements in pool plant operations and energy use, all those sorts of things, and I'm not responsible for those, pool development projects, but I would encourage my colleagues that are working on those to look at all those opportunities to be more efficient. We also have there's a program currently in place, which is our gas boiler phase out program, which is replacing all our gas boilers with heat pumps to save energy as well as emissions. And so those sorts of technologies will be part of any development that we look at going forward. Utilising repurposing some of our existing assets and trying to get more use out of them by perhaps covering parts of a pool. When you're in the water, you're in the water. If it's raining outside, it's probably not a big deal. But having a space where you can cover up and get warm when you get in and out of the pool might increase utilisation of some of our other outdoor pools where we can heat them for the winter. So there's a lot of opportunities, yes, for looking at alternative ways of building, maintaining, and operating pools.
And just the last question, and again, it's just looking at the aquatic space. There's a lot happened in that area in recent years. I mean, we've got the Te Whero facility, which is around outdoor kayaking. There's a surf facility going up in Dairy Flat. There are a lot of opportunities in the recreational space that actually generate an income. Conceivably, there may be possibilities with partnering up because you've already got a lot of the existing kit around treating water and all of the other things, infrastructure and the like being looked at. Are we aware of those things, and do we have any engagement there?
Operationally, yes, we have a relationship with the Te Whero, the team that runs Te Whero. I'm not involved in what's happening with the surf pool that's opening in the north.
Thank you. Good questions, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe he mana, tēnā koutou katoa to our staff. I got about 4 quick questions. The first one is the Manukau ward the only ward that has free entry into their pools for everyone?
I think you're correct, yes, it's paid to a targeted rate.
Okay, also, as a result, the findings of this report still found that the current gaps in the provision affected Otara Papatoetoe local board?
That's correct.
Do we have statistics on how many people from outside of the Manukau ward, as in the community, because you know that they're all welcome, but do you know of how many statistics of others from other wards or local boards that go to the free pools in Manukau ward?
Kia ora, councillor. We don't.
Kia ora.
We don't have that catchment data. It's very hard for us to sort of capture that information as people come in through the gates. Anyone can access the pools. Our anecdotal understanding is that the vast majority of our visitors are from the local ward, that people aren't coming, a significant amount of people aren't coming from outside the local board area to access the free adult swimming.
Okay, so even, oh, sorry.
I just add a supplement to that. We've recently, through approval with all local boards that have aquatic facilities, reset the fees and charges so that we've created a more equitable long-term sort of a pricing structure that enables families to access aquatics in their own area without having to sort of look for cheaper spaces in other areas.
Okay, and last one, Chair. I just wanted to sort of ask, as a result of all the findings that you reported in this agenda, can I confirm that it is so important that the staff end up developing an aquatic network program business case to investigate all the issues that you have found?
Yes, that's correct. So we've done this review triggered through an action in the Community Facilities Network Plan. We now have this really good understanding of where we sit currently and what things will look like going forward. We think it's really important that we build on those findings and we can explore all the options, understand what each one looks like, what's the scale of opportunity for each one of those, and then what that might look like in terms of bringing those options together into a possible pathway forward over the next 30 years. I think that's important. If we don't provide you with that advice, it will be hard to take that network view going forward and realise those kind of regional network efficiencies. It'll be harder to target the investment to best meet needs of Aucklanders now and over the long term. And probably harder to take advantage of that wider range of opportunities that we do have, but we just need to investigate further to understand how they might actually work.
Kia ora. You have my support. Kia ora, Herman.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 3 questions. One is there any pool inside the Rodney ward?
Kia ora, councillor. No, there's not.
No, so there's more than one ward that doesn't have a pool in it, and it makes up half of the super city's land mass. I just wanted to share that with my colleagues. Secondly, trying to make an assumption around, the more you spend in a pool, does that mean it costs more to run the pool long term? Is there any rule of thumb about how much you spend on a pool costs X amount to maintain it in OPEX in the future years? Is there any kind of rule of thumb around that?
Kia ora, councillor. Well, if we invest capital in a pool, then we have to then pay it off. So yeah, that increases our annual operating costs. But fundamentally, it's down to the size of the pool and the staffing that's required to operate the pool as a consequence of the size that we've determined fits the community need. The bigger the pool plant and so on and so forth, the more sort of material costs there are involved in running it, and the more pools there are, the more fitness spaces, recreation spaces and so on and so forth, increases the staffing budget that we'd need. So it's more the number of services determines the operational cost.
Thank you for that. Is there any way of you accessing and perhaps sharing with the committee what just the pool operations to run a swimming pool, the average of what that is? Despite, I'm not so worried about paying down the capex. My question is more around the OPEX, in which you've kind of reflected on staff costs and other services. I know you could have gyms and everything attached, but just in terms of running those pools, heating, etc., staffing, etc., maintenance, is there a way that you might get an average, be able to source an average cost of what that's costing us at the moment across our network?
Kia ora, yes, we can do that. They vary. Because as I said,
I'm sure, just after an average.
But yes, we can.
This is my budget chair hat on and how it might affect rates, right?
Yep.
So I'd just be interested in that. So thank you. And my last question through you, Chair, would be the fact there are no pools in Rodney. The northwest of Rodney is very keen to support the pool going in the Henderson ward, because they would travel to that. But north of Auckland and Warkworth, which is satellite city, with growth, plan for it and expansion will happen. It doesn't feature in the network plans at the moment, probably because the development isn't there yet. So my question, I guess, what that community would ideally want is a simple learn to swim pool. They're worried about their children and disabled access for disabled people to get in and out of that a cheap kind of learn to swim pool. It doesn't have to be particularly big. If that was a possibility, just reflecting on the mayor's kind of comments earlier in the day, where maybe we could spread the money further over with less sophisticated or elaborate pooling. Would we be prepared to work with the Kaipara District Council in terms of, because people would travel across the border and use that pool and walk with. If that was to eventuate, would it be your team that could communicate with the Kaipara District to see if they might be willing to contribute to such a build?
I think at the program business case, we would not go to that level of detail, but it is an issue for rural settlement like Warkworth and also places like Wahiki, where they don't meet the threshold to trigger a wide, larger facility. So a community response seems to be the way forward. So a smaller pool, I know that Wahiki is working with their communities to try to find a solution. Do you want to speak to that, Garth?
I can only say that I support and do the. You have my support for a aquatic facility in Rodney, but I don't think that my team is the. We'd certainly provide advice and would be open to helping to facilitate anything, but I don't think that's part of my team's role to sort of work on a new facility for Rodney.
Okay. I guess I just very quickly, Chair, I was just aware that the officers weren't totally perhaps au fait with the Dairy Flat Surf Park build that's actually happening at the moment. They've broken ground on that. That's for people who are competent swimmers and take their surfboards in there and surf on giant waves that it creates. So it's not a learn to swim activity, just for knowledge of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, once again, different teams on that surf park. One was more around, I think, broader infrastructure and connection to roads and things, not necessary support for the facility itself, but good point. Councillor Foley, last question, then we'll move to debate. Thank you.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair, and thanks for letting me ask one more question. Before I ask my question, I just wanted to just clarify or push back a little bit and say that as a regular user of the Otara pools, my observation is that about 1 in 3 come from outside of my local board area to use our free pools, and mainly from the Howick Botany area. And in the spa and sauna, it's probably higher, because usually I'm the only one in the sauna who's from Otara, and the other ajuma in there are usually from Howick and Botany. So just to clarify that. My question is, you mentioned earlier on about the possibility to expand our existing facilities. And I'm mindful that for a long time, our local board included expanding, like the Papatoi pool, for example, which is short by maybe 7 metres, some very small amount from being an Olympic pool. They call it a 50-metre pool, but actually it's short by like 7 metres. And for a long time, that was on the cards or on the plans to expand, but the cost was just too high. Would that be something that would be included? So expanding the facilities, would that include expanding the pool itself to make it Olympic-sized? Would that be an option that local boards might be able to advocate for?
Thank you for the question. Well, I think when we have been talking about the extensions or upgrades to existing facilities, it's really about how could that add extra capacity into the network? So I'll probably more come in at that from a view of how can we add maybe additional leisure experiences or additional functionality. If there's already potentially that function for lane swimming, is it that extending it brings, is that going to allow more people to use that facility? Is that what is needed based on what we know about demand? So probably more thinking about it from that point of view.
Kia ora, thank you. I appreciate that. Kia ora, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Right, we'll just get sorry, Councillor Dalton. Oh, cool. I'll just get you all to step back from the desk, what is it called, table, and we'll kick off the debate. Councillor Dalton, Deputy Chair, you'd like to start? Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I do welcome the review of the pool network. I remember back in the mid-2010s decade when Len Brown was here, and we kept rates down. We needed a 4.5% rate increase to keep the lights on, but we went with a 2.5%. And for the next few years, all we could do was plan. And this is from local board land. We can plan things, but we can't do anything. There's no money to build the infrastructure. Part of the reason why we have so many gaps in our infrastructure now. And when we decision make for the time, for that point in time, and not for future generations, we're doing them a disservice. To keep kicking the infrastructure decisions down the road because we want to hold rates down, because it is the right thing politically to do, it is doing a disservice to future generations. And in fact, it provides false hope, because we're not actually bringing the policies back. We're not bringing the policies back to say, no, we're not going to do pools anymore. We're not in the pool market anymore. At least if we did that, Aucklanders would know where we stood with it, but instead we keep with our policies that we've agreed on, and then we don't fund them. To ensure that this review, when it comes back, it needs to be timely, because otherwise it'll be labelled as an unfunded mandate, because that's what happens when people can't get their heads around strategic planning, because their decision making is for now and not for future generations. So the critical point is that that review comes back and it does inform the next LTP refresh. And so it doesn't gather dust on a shelf, because that planning that was done circa 2015, especially in the local board space, did sit on a shelf. And when you get the money finally to implement, they're out of date. And you have to go back and you have to do some more reviews and some more planning. So this review must be comprehensive, and it must be done in time, and we must ensure that it is used to inform infrastructure. It'll make sure that we are going to build the right thing in the right place at the right time. We have a limit on the number of deep water pools. I don't know that we serve our disability community well. All of these things need to be incorporated in what we build, how we build it, and where we build it. Pools are one of the most important assets that we provide to our community. They want them. Our pools had 2.7 million visitors last year. Our stadiums had 500,000. Pools are the third most used asset behind parks, which are top, and libraries, which are second. Councillor Lee's right. We do have a social contract as a city. We do. And our residents have expectations of us. In fact, we have a social contract as a country, which is currently being eroded. So let us not do the same thing. Limit pools at your peril, because this is what Aucklanders want from us. School pools were an amazing community asset. I remember when my kids went to Weymouth Primary, I was on the Board of Trustees. We got the key, or anyone could apply to get the key to the pool. And we used it. We used it on the weekends. We could use it after school. And it was a great place for community to gather, local community, in their local school area with the local kids and parents. And it's a real shame that that doesn't happen anymore because the government has chosen not to fund them. Kids learnt to swim in those pools. And I'm glad that the kids now are coming to our pools during the day. They're coming down and they're coming along in our off-peak time. So we can provide that to ensure that we continue to help keep our appalling drowning statistics down for when those kids go to the local beach. At least they will have some swimming schools. The provision is particularly important when we talk about drowning stats to the south and the west, acknowledging the councillors who are really trying to get pools in their areas. In regard to determining how families and communities live their lives, how they get to pools, how they use public transport or not many of us around this table will have that lived experience to be able to call the shots on how they should get somewhere. And I hope that the report will somehow encapsulate that. I don't know if it's too broad for the scope, but we need to be able to capture the social constructs around accessibility to ensure that where those pools are put, it is meaningful. More than anything, it is about getting some sense and pragmatism around our pool network. And at that point, there should be conversations with third-party funders. There are examples throughout the country where industry funds community assets as their commitment to supporting the community in which they are doing their business, in a community that they are impacting on the environment, where they are impacting on the social construct of communities. Those industries have taken responsibility and said, we'll build your community hall, we'll build your pool, and we'll build your library. We need to have those conversations with industry for Auckland, and they'll be unique. They could be unique to the west, they could be unique to the south. So I welcome this. We're all in this together. He waka eke noa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Councillor Baker.
So you're just dealing with the B, which is the actual thing that we're directing people to do. And so for me, I'd like to see within the report that comes back, or the policy that comes back, that actually we do look at it from a network perspective, because the questions today have shown how quickly we dive into what's going on in our patch. And so I want to see us, it would be great to see a network plan or a network policy that actually has no boundaries within it. It does not show local board and ward boundaries. We should be looking at it from a complete network and where these things are located. And Greg made a really good point that people will travel. It doesn't matter that one ward hasn't got a pool. We need to have a network of facilities that is able to cater for the needs of our communities, and pools are, from what I understand, the most expensive things to build and the most expensive things for council to run. So we can't have them everywhere, and so we have to make sure they are in the right place that isn't impacted by local board boundaries or by ward boundaries, which are purely a political administrative construct. So we need to make sure that our network is correct and that it is a network. Secondly, I'd like to see the work come back, look at how we can actually work with others in providing pools. And so out south there's some work getting done at the moment with developers as to how they may be able to take on some of the capital cost and how we may be able to become tenants. We don't have to, council doesn't have to own and operate everything. And so I'd like to see the policy come back with that opportunity. And similarly, just it is one of the great weaknesses, I guess, of our facilities of any type, is that we have regional and we have local. There is nothing between. I would love to see us in a whole lot of our facilities have sub-regional that are looking after, you know, huge areas. You'll get that. That will be a natural fallout of going to a network plan that is not based on local board and ward boundaries. And then lastly, in terms of the school pools, one of the reasons that Ministry of Education is getting out of pools is the cost to operate them and the compliance issues. And so we've heard examples of where communities and local boards have banded together with schools and communities. Franklin's been doing it for years in rural schools because huge parts of the ward, and Rodney will be the same, have no access to pools, and they have just gone about working with the local schools. It's a fundraiser for the school to sell keys to the gates. The local board has provided funding for chemicals, and it has been a great result. So I'd like to see us investigating how we can be the facilitator for the community to actually support schools in retaining their things. So that's what I'd like to see in the policy when it comes back, as we give direction as to a network of pools or aquatic facilities. Thank you.
Kia ora, Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, yes. Look, I support the the recommendations, although I do have real reservations when we're talking about leasing things. I just wonder how that stacks up financially, and especially when we're talking about market failure in an area, we're then asking the market to provide through the back door. I'm a bit concerned about that, but it is right to look at all the options. So I'm glad that we're looking at all the options, bring them all back, let's have a look. I support the Mayor absolutely in trying to find cost-effective solutions. I mean, you see this council hasn't built a pool from concept to build ever since amalgamation. So clearly there's market failure. Clearly there is concerns about cost-effective delivery. And just as a little aside, the last government allowed development contributions to be spent on pools. That was a law change. And yet I haven't been given any confidence that that's actually going to happen. And in fact, suburban Aucklanders are asking, where's the money going? We're putting the money in, what are we getting back? Well, don't want to be negative though, I've got a solution. So in terms of cost-effective delivery, I reckon we can deliver stage one of what the community needs in the Northwest with that $15 million. You'll note that there's no outdoor pools. I think from west of State Highway 20, it might even be further. I haven't done the maths, but you know, that'd be 500,000 plus West Aucklanders without outdoor provision. So we look at something cheap. We look at getting it in the ground and giving people belief that we're actually looking after them. We maybe put a rudimentary cover over it to sort of keep the weather out a little bit. That can be delivered, right? I recommend colleagues, so you want to know more about what I'm talking about, I'm sure you do. Check out He Puna Taimawana, which is the pools in New Brighton. They did in Christchurch. They delivered that with $11 million. And you should see these photos. You should see the visitation they get. I travelled all the way down there to check them out. They're absolutely fantastic. So we can do things cost effectively. What we need is council to actually get behind it. Who knows? Look, I think, personally, I think we should be moving the funding forward in the Northwest and we'll try it out. Let's back this proposal, right? Because West Aucklanders have the solution here and we can learn from other places like Christchurch about that as well. And just on that note, I don't want to spend our funds on land acquisition. That's very expensive when we could be using that money to actually build things, right? 15 million is a lot of pool. It's not a lot of land, for example. Just in terms of beaches being a replacement, I just politely have to point out, in terms of West Coast beaches, 25% can't get to them at all because we don't have bus routes. So that's something I bang on about here all the time. But for those that aren't local, you'd be surprised at how far away these beaches are for West Aucklanders, right? From my house in Te Aratu to Piha is about a 40-minute drive. You know, people don't have a concept of that if they're not locals. They're actually really far away. So you know, looking at things in the West Auckland context, West Wave has topped 1 million visitors in a year. 1 million visitors! It's insane. And so for school holidays, for weekends, etc., you will see lines guaranteed, and you'll see them going all the way out into the car park. It's becoming a huge health and safety issue, actually, with kids having to wait over an hour in hot summer heat. And that happens every day in weekends and in school holidays, and sometimes even during the week. We're desperate here, and it's not good enough to say, look, I will deliver it in the second decade. We need to be backing flexible, when we've got flexible ideas on how to do things cheaper, we need to back them in, and we need to maybe look at funding them. What I've proposed here is not reinventing the wheel. Actually, this is pretty much my part-time job now. I'm going around talking to people, stakeholders in the community. We've set up an informal group of myself, Brooke from Henderson Massey, Mark Allen from Waitakere Rangers, Anna Atkinson from Upper Harbour. We meet and have coffee and discuss all these opportunities that come at us, you know, and we have people wanting to partner with us all the time on this stuff. What I want is something formal in place, and that's why I recommended the working group thing, for a credibility perspective and also to sort of safeguard our risks. Because when you do have politicians going out like I'm doing, you've got to just basically look at that. So, you know, I think we should be looking at setting up, it's called a pool squad, that's what we call ourselves, and that's what we should be doing. So I'll be talking to the local boards about how we kind of formalise that. But look, working on this issue every day, the other thing I would point out that this isn't actually about local board boundaries. You know, the Northwest is a good example of that. That's a catchment of 150,000 people from Rodney, and thanks Councillor Sayers for that, from the Albany ward, from obviously the Waitakere ward, and even further afield. We get them from all comers for Westwave, sorry. So these are based on catchments. I would challenge the contention that they are based on political boundaries, actually. I'm more than happy to build a pool for the Northwest if it's outside my ward, so long as people in Massey can get to it. That's all I care about. So, you know, I didn't mean this to be a bit of a sales pitch. I'm just saying that the Mayor is absolutely right how we can deliver things cheaper and better for the communities, but we need to go that next step and actually back in those ideas and put our money where our mouth is. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair. Look, I welcome this review as well as others have said, and I'm really, really happy as well to see that we've beefed up reference to the local boards and how local boards will be engaged going forward in recognising that shared governance role that we have with our local boards. I support more facilities. I do feel sorry for our cousins out the west because we are lucky in Manukau and in South Auckland that our council, Manukau City Council, had the foresight to provide, to use our airport shares revenue to provide a pool in every suburb in the Manukau area. So I absolutely support Henderson, Massey and Fo and Rodney and Northwest, if we're not talking about local board boundaries or ward boundaries, for more pools. And I think that this review is a good step towards that. I do want to push back a little bit on some of the comments about how this is so expensive and it's not council business, or it's something that central government should be doing and not us, or private companies should be doing and not us. As Councillor Dalton said, this is something that is really important to Aucklanders across the board, across the city. It's our third most used facility across the city, across the whole of our city. When I talk to residents who complain to me often about rates, what do you use your rates on? Why are we paying rates? When I start talking about libraries, the parks, the playgrounds, and the swimming pools, that placates them. People are satisfied in areas of high deprivation like mine when I start saying, well, you know the Otara pool that's free for you to use, our awesome pools in Otahu, Mangere pool as well, and the Papatoetoe pools, that is a result of your rates, that shared communal way that we provide those facilities free for you, yes, by a targeted rate, but that's a targeted rate that's unanimously accepted across our ward. So I absolutely commend the staff for bringing this forward, and I look forward to the opportunities that it might yet still reveal to us. I'm open to thinking about private-public partnerships, and thank you for the reminder about the development contributions, because when I was chair of the local board, we actually had a big developer who was building something on the border between Otara and Howick, huge land there, I won't say his name, very famous man, but he was talking about how he wanted those development contributions to be used for a pool for the area, for example. And at that time, we weren't able to do that specifically because those just went into a big bucket. But yeah, I would absolutely welcome what comes out of this review, especially in that space of how to fund more pools for areas that do need them. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson online.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I think I'll be in the award winning of the shortest presentation today. I just want to make sure that the officials recorded what Councillor Baker said, because I had a little set of bullet points I was going to cover. He covered them all absolutely magnificently. He wins the chocolate fish for the day, in my view. And I just think what Andy said was perfect. I'm going to leave it at that.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leone.
Yeah. Look, I think it's been, really good presentation today and a good debate about how we need to move forward. And I think a common theme that I'm finding, obviously, in being a councillor, is that there has been a need for significant change in culture on the way that council has done things. And I know that obviously a majority of these pools were built before it became a super city, and the costs that I have been given around building pools going forward, I believe, has been astronomical. And so I really welcome the idea of reviewing the way that we actually go out to market, or even look at, the cap on the budgets that we should be looking at for pools. Because if we don't have $80 million or $100 million, but we do have 10 or 20, we should be looking at what we can do with that money to build something, at least to have something in there. And if we can't do that, we should be, as a council, looking at how we can work with the schools. I know that there's a lot of informal agreements that are happening with local boards, but it's not good enough. I went to West Wave with my twins over the school holidays, and I stood in that line for an hour, because I wanted to make sure that when I'm doing the advocacy for people in West Auckland, that's a combined, if we're not going to look at local board areas or ward areas, just look at the populations. That's nearly 500,000 people only have access to one pool in that area. Of course, yes, they can drive into central Auckland, they can drive to other parts of the city, but actually it is about accessibility, and every Aucklander deserves, whether they're paying rates through being a homeowner or a renter, they're still paying rates. So they should all have access to pools, parks and libraries. And if we're not meeting that need, then we have to look outside the square. We need to look at these private partnerships to get these deals across the line. Every Aucklander deserves to be able to have a 15-minute, some way, whether it's public transport, walking or something else, to get to a pool. But that's my view. I know that there's disagreements on that from other people, but definitely that's what I'll be pushing going forward.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Mayor Brown.
Very quickly, I'd just like that the people doing this are informed by the 10 purchasing rules that the Revenue Committee went through the other day, which will clean out some of the ability to spend $76 million where 20 to do. And for the benefit of Councillor Henderson, 40 minutes is what it takes to get from Ponsonby to Parnell. So you're lucky you can get out of Piha in 40 minutes. And why would you stand for an hour in a queue when you can go to Piha in 40 minutes? But the Revenue's 10 rules are really good. And thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just turn on my video for you. Here we go. Yeah, I just want to speak if the report, when it gets returned, could include some sort of consideration for the rural communities. And as Councillor Baker spoke about and has been endorsed by Councillor Williamson and probably other councillors who haven't spoken yet, to give officers some confidence around this, is that whole, rural, a mum and dad who have children living in a rural community love their children's lives as much as anyone else, and they want them to be able to learn to swim and not drown. So if there's, could the paper could I request that the paper looks at that idea that Councillor Baker put forward about us, sub-regional basis, and how rural communities might be able to be included in that, and some sort of learn to swim pool included in our strategy going forward. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, and yes, that definitely will be considered and included. Councillor Watson.
Thanks. I won't take too long. It's been really interesting listening to all the speakers, and a lot of really good information that's been put out from everyone basically. But I guess what really resonates with me is just how important pools are. They're an integral part of life in Auckland, and really, I used to be of the mayor's view in terms of proximity to the beach up in Whangapraia, Stanmore Bay, way back in Rodney days. They had a kind of a poll whether to build a big leisure centre and pool, and I must admit I was one of the ones that said, well, no, there's the beach about 100 metres over there, just go and use that. But nowadays it's the most busy, and virtually every kid that's brought up on that Hibiscus coast goes to learn to swim there, and you can't really go into the sea if you don't know how to swim. So part of the real pride of Auckland has been its network of pools, with its Parnell Baths, the Tepid Baths, or Birkenhead War Memorial, whatever. It's a real, as Councillor Foley said, something that really unites people and unites the community. It's a gathering, it's a focal point as well. And it's absolutely right. Since the Super City, the beneficiaries, I think, of North Shore Ward, they have a pool in just about every suburb, Dakapuna, Birkenhead, Glenfield, everyone. But even with that, even within that quite defined location, you have people who are landlocked who rely on the schools. So down in the poorer parts of North Shore, down in Birkdale Beach Haven, it used to just be the local school pool. They couldn't make it, or wouldn't go to Birkenhead, or wouldn't go elsewhere. So, but those school arrangements, they're a bit fraught, and I think in the North Shore, a lot of them have faded now. They don't use the Birkenhead College pool anymore, because there's all sorts of issues with it. So I guess what I'm saying, Mr. Chair, is that I commend the officers for the work they've done. Pools are really important, and I I state the obvious. We haven't kept abreast of the phenomenal development, not least of which in places like the northwest that Councillor Henderson referred to, where there's a real chronic need. But obviously, I think as any number of people said, we need to find a more cost-efficient way of delivering them. But deliver them, I think we must make every attempt to do, because it's inequitable otherwise in terms of this, hundreds of thousands of new people who don't have access to the pool, and that will be their access to water. It won't necessarily be beaches. We know that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. And just final quick word for me. I think, good points from everyone, good discussion, and this will be worked on with the local boards, but as Councillor Baker and others have said, this needs to be a regional approach, because we have failed in the last 15 years. The approach of some councillors like Councillor Henderson and Leone having to beg for funding for early stages, which will still be a long time away for those communities, is a concern. The other thing is why we're doing this, not only for the fun, not only because Aucklanders should be proud and excited about where they live, it's for the prevention of drowning. I mean, in New Zealand, our stats are almost twice as bad as Australia, like two times as many people are dying in New Zealand than Australia from drowning. And, the stats for Auckland are pretty terrible as well. So we know that, I've got a 3-year-old now myself, and those swimming lessons have changed his life. He can now access the beach, but I don't think he would have been interested of going near the beach if he hadn't had swimming lessons. And as a parent or just anyone going to those facilities, when they are packed, doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel enjoyable, and you are kind of wishing you didn't turn up when they're totally overwhelmed and packed like that. The other thing is, to your point, Councillor Watson, I spoke at Anne Hartley's memorial last week. Her first campaign in the 80s was, or 70s maybe even, was to get $100,000 to build the pool at Birkdale College at the time, Birkenhead College, and it cost $100,000 with other community pitching in, and that was the focus of the community then. But there is a massive issue. Why the heck should it be costing 70, 80, whatever, $90 million? Part of this assessment should be investigating why it is so expensive. It is outrageous, and it is a barrier when you see those sorts of figures, because you should be able to get pools like the one in Birkenhead Leisure Centre. It's had solar for over a decade. It's heated. It's an outdoor pool. It is, getting to the end of its life probably, but it is somewhere for people to go to, and it's interesting, and it doesn't have to be the Rolls-Royce model. So I think we need to look forward to that as well, but the focus needs to be ensuring that people have access right around our communities. We know that on the shore, even though we do have beaches close by, there's some of the busiest pools, Glenfield, Albany as well, some of the busiest pools, and we shouldn't have those. I see those images on social media all the time, Councillor Henderson of Westwave, of people standing in the heat in lines trying to get in to access those pools. So I think this is really important. This isn't telling us to spend any money today or tomorrow. I said in the early stages, Councillor Baker, with the staff team, it must include those partnerships, potential partnerships that you have come to me about, and so as the Franklin Local Board. How do we ensure that we are empowering others to provide facilities if it means that they come 10 years earlier? But to Councillor Henderson's point, we need to make sure that we don't skimp or end up costing the ratepayer a lot more in the end. I thought I was the last speaker, but now Councillor Stewart has come on board. So Councillor Stewart.
Yes, it's been a very good debate. One of the things, just to comment, I know that the Hilton Brown Swim School, they've been approaching council for quite a few years, and they've been wanting to lease council land, pay for a lease, and it could be a long-term lease up to 20 years or more, and they would build the pools, and the swimming pools would be they wouldn't be wave pools or anything like that. They would be actually to learn to swim, and they could probably do it in all communities. The begging, just about begging, to be able to use some of our council land so they can build. So there will be private institutions out there that are wanting to build pools, and maybe we can do a deal. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you very much. Right, all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Perfect. Now we're going to, because that debate went a little bit longer than I thought, we're going to go to lunch now, and councillors have requested there is sandwiches in the side room today, so you can head there or head out for half an hour. So we'll be back at 1:10. Thank you.
If the air conditioning can't work, could we look to have the back windows